Solving quadratic equations by the quadratic formula. The solution of a quadratic equation, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, are given by the quadratic formula. In this case, our quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c. All of it divided by 2 times a. And we have an example in this case. 2x squared plus 3x plus 1 equals 0. So let's start by writing our formula at the top of our page. In this case, top of my notes here. Once again, quadratic equations, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. And I've highlighted the a, b, and c so that we can tell which one's which. Note it includes the signs for a, b, and c, but not the x's. So our quadratic formula, x equals negative v plus or minus the square root of v squared minus 4 times a times c, all of it divided by 2a. And let's also highlight the a value, the v value, and the c value to match up with what our quadratic equation colors have. That way makes it easier to visualize where each value goes. So basically I define the quadratic formula a plug-and-play equation because it comes out as strictly and straightforward from your quadratic equation values. So you plug in the values and have fun or enjoy. So let's try it out. Our equation in this case. Notice I reversed the order of the 0. It doesn't make a huge difference. I put the 0 on the left side rather than on the right side, but it's still the same idea, same concept, okay? It's same equation. 0 equals 2x squared plus 3x plus 1. It's the same as what we started with, but on the opposite side. And I've labeled them different colors, that way we can tell which one's which. We have, in that case, let's list them out. A, B, and C values. The a value we can tell is the 2, and it's a positive 2. The v value is a positive 3, and the c value is a positive 1. So whatever signs you would have there, you'd include them in this case. So for our quadratic formula then, let's fill in the blanks, and I made it in a fillable blank format that we can visually see where we're filling them in. So notice that we normally have it in this format. And filling in the blanks, let's start with our a value. There is our a value in the bottom, and also next to the 4 is our a value of 2. B values at the beginning, after the negative sign, and before the square. There we go. There's our b values. And c value shows up once. There we go, at the very end. And now, it's a matter of simplifying one step at a time, okay? It becomes sometimes a little tedious, but it's pretty straightforward. So in this case, simplifying. Let's try to simplify one step at a time. Let's realize that we don't really need the parentheses up on that 3. It's there to show where our v value was. If I had a negative, then we would use it. Negative times a negative gives us a positive, but we don't in this case. Okay, let's go for the square root, and let's realize that 3 squared, 3 times 3 gives us 9. And 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 1 is still 8, but it has a negative. So it's a negative 8 then. On the bottom, 2 times 2 gives us 4. And now let's simplify one more step. So this is what I meant. You write it each step. Simplify one step and continue to the next one. So 9 minus 8 will give us positive 1. So we have x equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of positive 1. And look at that. And the square root of 1, you can try this on your calculator, right? Would be 1. So technically x equals negative 3 plus or minus 1 divided by 4. Well, do remember, it has a plus or minus, so that implies that we're going to split this up into 2 equations. If I couldn't simplify a 1 and the exact value, and all I would get is a decimal, then I would probably leave it in this case, because that's technically your answer if you can't simplify any further. But I want to see and choose separate answers. That way you can see for future reference. So splitting this up, x equals negative 3 plus 1 divided by 4. So there's the positive side of it. And let's look at the negative side, or when you have a negative sign on that one. So x equals negative 3 minus 1 divided by 4. And let's simplify, and let's see if we get an exact number or decimal. So x equals negative 2 divided by 4. Looks like we could end up with the decimal in this case. 2 divided by 4, or we can simplify it, negative 1/2. Both the 2 and the 4 are multiples of 2's. So half of 2 is 1, half of 4 is 2, giving us x equals negative 1/2. And let's go for the other one then. Negative 3 minus 1 gives us negative 4. So negative 4 divided by 4, that gives us negative 1. So there are our two answers in this case. And technically what we just found is the intercepts. So the x-intercepts. With the first one, 0, negative 1/2, and the second one, a 0, negative 1. But all we were looking for was the x values, agreed? So unless I ask what are the x-intercepts, then you'd give it as a coordinate. But since in this case all we're looking for is the x value, it's x equals minus 1/2 and x equals negative 1. And that's a quick reference. Let's go through it real quick in a calculator. So bring your calculator, turn on your calculator, clear anything that you might have on there. Go to y equals. At y1, we want to enter 2x. Your x variable is right next to your alpha button. We want to put square. On the left side, somewhere around there, you'll see an x square. You can put a caret key right below your clear button. I'll go with a square for this case. Plus 3x plus 1. I'll go to zoom and do a zoom standard, option number 6, and there we go. You may or may not be able to see where they cross. So I'll go to zoom, in this case, and zoom box, option 1. And I'll move my cursor that way I can see it. And I want to see the region where it seems to touch or cross maybe the x-axis. So I'll go roughly a little lower there. I'll hit enter once, push up, continue to push up, and then go to the right. That way I can see a box. There we go. Now I want to enclose the area that I want to zoom in, roughly that area. I'll hit enter, and now it zooms in. So there, now we can actually see that it does cross the x-axis. And in this case, we are verifying that our answers are correct. The first one that we see on the right here on our screen is negative. So I'll put trace, second from the top. You'll see the trace button, second to the right. And I want to enter a negative sign right next to my enter key. You'll see a negative sign, and then a 1. Hit enter, and you should get a 0. Yeah, we get a 0. There it is. Okay, let me move it out of the way so I can see the other one. The other answer was minus 1/2. So I'm still in the trace option, so I'll put a negative sign again. Right next to my enter key, I see a negative sign. And I'll put 1 divided by 2 for the implication of 1/2. So 1 divided by 2, it's negative 1/2. Hit enter, and it gives me my other x-intercept. And there we can tell by because the y is 0. And notice it simplifies the 1/2 into negative 0.5 for us. So we just verified that it did work. We definitely got the correct solution for x equals negative 1/2 and x equals 1 in this case, or our x-intercepts.